Why are they filming you?
I don't know. I most of the time I don't know why they're filming.
Are you somebody I'm supposed to know?
It's Republicans wrapping their arms around Republicans rather than doing the right thing on behalf of the heroes.
It was an absolute pleasure to see a Democrat not cowering.
Married to one of Hillary Clinton's closest advisors.
You never back down from anybody.
A photo of an anonymous man's bulging underwear
Was tweeted from Congressman Weiner's account.
Today I am announcing my resignation from Congress.
The punchline is true about me. I did the dumb thing, but I did a lot of good things too. Running for mayor was the straightest line to clean up the mess that I had made.
This is Anthony Weiner calling. Yes, I'm not Anthony Weiner, the one running for mayor.
Why do you think you deserve the second chance?
I didn't want to answer.
I'm giving you the answer.
I thought you were thinking about it. I thought you
No,
were
I'm
trying
talking
to think.
words.
What I'm going to try to talk about is the issues facing New York City.
Are more women going to come to vote?
Just a quick optics thing, you will look happy.
Don't push up, Anthony. Show it to me again. Oh my God.
I can't believe I gave the press the finger.
How many women were there? Can you remember?
What I would like to talk about is housing in the Bronx. Any questions about that?
Why should we trust your judgment?
We're going to try to look like we're holding together as a group. I am profoundly sorry. And for that, I am profoundly sorry.
Does the wife's absence say anything?
What is wrong with you?
What is he so afraid of?
Your brother said that your father never hugged you.
Do you believe you're suffering from any sort of addiction?
What are you, the referee over there?
We are staying calm and managing the situation.
You're a real scumbag, Anthony.
Takes one to know one, jackass.
Why didn't he just walk?
Let me just be brutally honest with you. There's no chance to win anymore.
Thought it was going pretty well.
It's really apocalyptic right now. But at a certain point, you've got to say, look, I don't quit.
This is the worst. Doing a documentary on my scandal. Hi.
So it's often that I get to say that I'm on stage with people who made a great movie, who made a good movie, but it's a rarity that I get to say I'm on stage with people who made an instant classic. Congratulations, guys. I truly believe that in 50 years, we're gonna look back on documentaries and people are still gonna be talking about Weiner. It's not just the access, as I told you, it's not just the incredible access that this documentary has. It's the pacing, the storytelling, everything about it is just executed perfectly. It's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. That's very nice praise. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
And so let's talk about the access, though, because I think that's what so many people are curious about as soon as you get in front of them, which is I know that you worked for Anthony for a while, right? And you had been sort of beating on his door to do a documentary about him. Was it because of the scandal that you wanted to do a documentary, or because you just knew that he was a great character?
Yeah, well, I met him working for him in politics. I was his chief of staff for a couple of years when he was in Congress. And, working for him that closely, I got to see, this was years before his scandal, just what an interesting, dynamic, and multifaceted person he really was. And then I left politics and started working in filmmaking with Elyse. And it was after his scandal that we pitched him on the idea of doing a documentary, of telling his story, hopefully in a way that could get past some of the punchline that he became after his scandal. And yeah, it was this ongoing conversation that went on actually over the course of a couple of years of going back and forth, trying to figure out if it would be something that he'd be comfortable with. And then when he decided to run for mayor of New York, he actually texted me early that morning after he had announced he was running, saying that he was in the race and if I wanted to come with a camera to film for the documentary, that I could. And so, of course, grabbed a camera, ran over, and started shooting.
And I can't say this enough, you are there filming for every important moment that it seems like could have happened during this entire race. There isn't a moment that you miss. I mean, there were so many times where something happens and I'm waiting for you to recreate it somehow, but you're actually just there when it happens.
Well, it really was an experience of being by his side from, as you see in the film, from the day he announced he was running all the way through to the end, and it was pretty much all access throughout the entire campaign.
But this question about why did he allow us to film? this is something we wondered about ourselves, and
you pose it to him.
That's right, and we pose it to him directly in the film, and he answers it at the end when he says that he wanted to be viewed as the full person that he was instead of a punchline. And that was our intention with the film, to take somebody who had been just reduced to a caricature and a punchline and offer a more nuanced portrait.
But even in offering a more nuanced portrait, I feel like you offer up more questions about Anthony Weiner than you do answers. The punchline gives an answer, an easy answer for people, but the documentary opens up a lot more questions, and I would honestly say for better or worse for him. I'm not really sure. Do you know how he feels about it?
Well, he hasn't actually seen the film yet.
Really?
Yeah, we offered to show it to him many months ago, actually before it was entirely finished. And he hasn't wanted to see it. He has said that he's not eager to relive it, which of course we can respect, but we imagine he'll see it at some point and we'll see what he thinks then.
And now the interview that we see at the end of the trailer, right? This is the sort of anchor interview that it feels like you guys got after having shot everything. It's sort of, pops in and out from beginning, middle, and then sort of him sort of reflecting on the story. At that point, after everything that had happened, he was still eager to help you guys finish the story?
Yeah, I mean, he sat down with us. It was 3 or 4 months after the end of the campaign for this. This is the one sit-down interview that we have in the film. He sat down with us for a few hours. And I think, as Elyse was saying, there was some impulse, I think, to have a different version of his story told than the one that played out in the headlines and the New York Post and kind of the punchline version that we all got to know through much of what we saw in the media. And here in this documentary, you get a chance to see something that is a little bit more nuanced and complex and ultimately human.
Now, you said that he contacted you the day that he started running for mayor, and you were sort of along for the campaign ride. When the campaign ended up shifting and the curveballs got thrown, for lack of a better term, for you, did any part of you want to pull out of it at that point? Because now you're documenting that punchline again. There's a part of you that I'm sure is like, we can get past this and keep trying to tell the story, but you are essentially, in many ways, fulfilling the same thing that a lot of the media is doing before you start editing, Well,
I mean, one of the things that happened is actually when the scandal broke, our intention, it only intensified because we went in wanting to show a more nuanced perspective of a person who had just been reduced to one thing. And when the scandal broke, that just increased. I mean, we just saw he was swirled up in a media firestorm. And so then our hope was to show a different side, offer a look at the humanity behind the headlines, spend time with him, get inside his head, hear his thoughts, see what it means to be at the center of a media firestorm.
There was a moment, speaking to this, to do your question, there was a moment, I think it was the day after the scandal broke. We were, everyone in the campaign was in the middle of trying to figure out what was going on and how to manage it all. And he was pulling up to a campaign stop where he was scheduled to speak, and I was in the back seat with him, and you could see out the car window a horde of maybe like 24 media cameras just waiting to pounce on him when he gets out of the car. And I sort of saw him take a breath and then go to open the door. And right before he gets out, he turns to me and he says, "So, this is working out pretty well for you, huh, Josh?" And then out the door and off into the media horde. So as storytellers, of course, we understand. We're looking for dramatic, compelling stories, and we knew we were in the middle of something. But as Elyse said, the purpose was to get beyond kind of the sensational version and to get to something deeper.
Well, it's the sort of eternal question of the documentary filmmaker. Is that whether or not you feel for your subject or not, you're also sitting there compiling the footage that you're getting so that you know what you have when you get into the editing room. So you could be shooting someone breaking down and crying, or in the middle of a war. You could be a war photographer and you're still, focused on the job at the same time.
That's right. I don't know that I want to compare it to war photography.
No, of course.
But yeah, no, there is a thing that happens, I think, for a lot of documentarians in dramatic situations. There's a scene in the film when the scandal first breaks. The news has just emerged, and I was in the office with Anthony and Huma and his staff as the scandal is unfolding, and everyone's trying to figure out what's going on. And he asks his staff to leave, but he allows me to stay and to keep shooting. So I'm shooting with Anthony and Huma, and certainly the thought in my mind, I can't believe I'm here right now, and it's a very emotional moment, and I'm feeling for them, and it's very intense. At the same time, as you say, I'm also keeping the camera rolling, and there's a kind of emotional remove that I think you have to kind of balance as you're trying to capture the story like this.
And I think that's the other thing that's a shocking part about the film is Huma's role. Huma Abedin, for those of you who don't know, Anthony Weiner's husband. She is a top advisor to the Clinton campaign and to Hillary Clinton for many years, even when she was in the State Department, I believe, right? At what point, at any point, did she ask you to stop filming? Did she not want to be filmed? Because you know, it's a documentary about him. It's his scandal. Sure, that's her husband and she supports him. But in many ways, there were times where it seems like she could have been like, just him, not me, please.
Well, I mean, I think this question about why they let us film, you know, just as Anthony was reduced to a caricature and a punchline, so is she. I mean, you really get to see the judgment that was placed upon her. And while she is more quiet and reserved than Anthony, I do think she shared some of his desire of wanting a more fair and complete story told. But, you know, Josh was doing the majority of the shooting, but one ground rule was if anybody wanted him to stop filming, he did, and there were occasions where he did that.
She, maybe it's just me, but I thought Huma came across as a kind of a badass in the movie. Like so supportive, but to a degree, you know? Like she knew when to step in and be like, Anthony, that's enough. Take it down a notch.
Well, one of the things...
Because he really needs that.
I mean, one of the things that's exciting is that she's been guessed about endlessly, and I think a caricature version of her has been in the press. And in our film, you get to see a multifaceted look at her. You see her as a wife, a mom, a person with a really important job. You know, she's been a political professional for many decades, and you see that.
And now, even though I think because Anthony Weiner is embroiled in such a humiliating scandal, people forget that he is a politician, was a politician, and when you watch this documentary, even within the scandal, I think he's one of the greatest politicians we've ever had, whether you believe in his politics or not. He gets up in front of people, he's incredibly articulate and charismatic, and he's a punching bag. He takes it like a good politician should. Did you have faith in him as a candidate? Did you believe in him as a candidate?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things, and this is the way that the film starts and the way that we set up, is, you know, he had a rise to prominence before his scandal that was very legitimate. He was a rising star in the Democratic Party because he was so effectively, you know, championing this agenda that really was resonating, especially with progressives. You know, he became somewhat famous for ranting on the floor of the House of Congress about the 9/11 healthcare bill. And I think that he had a way about him that it was aggressive, it was brash, fighting for the agenda that he believed in, that was really working for progressives, and that made him, you know, a very popular politician.
And he was rising. I mean, when he first got into the mayoral campaign, he was on top, right, in the polls?
Yeah, well, when the campaign began, you know, no one had any idea how it was going to unfold. And a lot of people counted him out. A lot of people thought, this is too soon. It's 2 years after this resignation. You know, he was considered in some ways a joke by many. And then within just about 6 weeks, very quickly, he rose to the top of the polls. And we were all looking on, and we as filmmakers were looking on and thinking, wow, you know, this could be one of the more remarkable comeback stories in American political history.
Now, Elyse, you said that Josh was doing most of the filming. When did you step in, and what was your major role during filming and once filming was done?
Yeah, well, so Josh and I have been a directing team for about 5 years, and we were always looking for exciting and dynamic characters to follow. So when this opportunity came along to film with Anthony, we knew it was something we couldn't pass down. But the first day of filming, we brought another camera person in, a guy by the name of Sean McGing, and it became very clear that it just needed to be one person. The logistics, you see one person in the car, and that should be Josh. So Josh did the bulk of the shooting, and we were in constant communication throughout the production, but then there were moments where we needed other camera people, and I was there like an election night outside. And then afterwards, you know, we worked together to craft the story and brought on an executive producer team, Motto Pictures, to help us, as well as an editor named Eli Dupre. And we worked for about 3 years. Yeah.
You worked for 3 years editing this?
A year, but 3 years total of production.
What was your toughest challenge when it comes to editing this? Because as I said at the top of this interview and in the green room before, one of the great successes of this documentary, I think, is just how well compiled and edited it is.
Well, I think as is often the case with documentaries these days, because there's no real cost to shooting anymore, so you end up compiling a lot of footage. We ended up with about 400 hours of footage. So just working through that and figuring out what was there. I mean, we had the natural arc of the campaign to sort of help hang the story on, of course. But yeah, it's always a challenge to sift through all that footage and come up with the story that we want to tell. And we also had this challenge of wanting to, you know, there was the public story that told out, and obviously, you know, late night comedians and headline writers had a field day with this story, and we wanted to include that, but also to make sure that we weren't piling on and making the easy joke, but we're contrasting that public story with some of the real humanity behind the headlines. So that was a challenge, is figuring out how to try to strike that balance as best we could.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we were talking earlier, I think one of the things that was important to us, Anthony is a very funny guy. He's got a lot of energy. And we knew early on that we wanted the film to speak and embody that, both tonally and in the editing and in the music. And one of the things we also looked for was bringing on an editor who had that sense of humor, and our editor did. And, it was an amazing collaboration.
When you're shooting this, you say you have 400 hours of footage, excuse me. One of the things that's so great about the documentary is its establishment of scenes, which I think a lot of documentaries fail to do a lot because they have so much footage, which is knowing that I have a scene and this scene itself has an arc and that arc itself places into the larger arc in some capacity. Did you know when you were shooting that you felt like you were shooting great scenes, or was it when you got into the editing room where you realized, like, oh, this scene has a structure and a beginning, middle, and end and really fits into this larger picture?
It's a great question, and it really is a combination. I mean, a lot of credit to our editor, Eli Dupre, who I think is a genius, who helped us to construct the whole thing. But there were definitely moments throughout filming where I knew, and we knew, okay, this is a pivotal scene, like the morning the scandal breaks or something like that. But then there are other moments where, when you're filming every day, all day for 4 months and collecting 400 hours, there's some moments that you just sort of have your head down and you're trying to capture as much of the story as you can, and it's not till later when you look at the footage and you realize, oh wow, there's something special here.
And there's also something about shooting on one camera. When you're shooting with one camera in a documentary setting and you have a scene, then it becomes about coverage, and you're focused on making sure that you have all the elements in place so that you can cut that scene dynamically, which is also hard because you have to choose when to move off of Anthony for a minute to get somebody else responding to him. So at that point, you have to decide I have a scene right now. I have to make sure that everything is getting covered here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I wasn't actually much of a cinematographer going into this film.
You're very good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would say, as a strong compliment, I think what you are is you're very efficient. You got everything very well. And a lot of times with early cinematographers, there's a lot of sort of punching in and punching out and trying to find the shot rather than just being like, here's my shot, it's a 2-shot, let it play out.
That's nice of you to say. Our editor liked to joke that the footage got substantially better from the beginning to the end, which is something he had to experience.
That was something that you learned halfway through shooting, that you could kind of just rest on one shot for a little bit?
I think the shaky camera sort of gets a little bit reduced by the end of the footage, yeah.
Did anyone get sick of having you there while you were shooting? Anybody in the campaign office?
I really became kind of a fixture in the campaign. So, again, it was so much time spent with Anthony and with everybody that, pretty quickly or early on, I just became kind of part of the environment of what was going on.
Now, you guys have done an incredible job of moving past the punchline, but sometimes I think moving past the punchline is still for a smarter audience, whether the story you've told does that or not. People will still stick to the controversy, the scandal. Do you worry that this might do more for a very large mainstream audience, this might maintain the scandal for Anthony or maintain the punchline?
I mean, we hope not. At the end of the film, Anthony says that he thinks, he cautions that our documentary could get sucked up into the entertainment vortex, and we understand that. But we wanted to tell an entertaining film as filmmakers, but we wanted to avoid the easy jokes and the stereotypes and provide a more nuanced picture of Anthony, but also about our politics and media. And one of the great things about making a documentary is that you get to spend 95 minutes with a subject or a story and explore nuance more than typical news media allows.
He's such a flawed character, especially as a politician, because the basis of a politician outside of policy is to get people to love them, to pay attention to them. And it's one of the things that you guys do really well in the documentary, and you do it subtly, is that he does seem addicted to love and attention in many ways. Did you try to explore that more with him? I mean, there's one moment in the documentary where you try to get him to open up a little bit in the car, and he very funnily makes fun of you. Isn't the idea of the fly on the wall is that you don't talk to me? Shut up, Josh.
Yeah, that was a funny moment where he sort of pushed me off. It was friendly, but yeah. In the course of being with him and filming with him, there were definitely moments where I knew I should hang back if they were tense or just he wasn't in the mood necessarily to open up. And there were other moments where, we tried to get him, I tried to, there were looser moments where I knew that I could maybe ask him a question or two. But it is an interesting question, about kind of what kind of makes him tick and how he sort of makes sense of all of this. And he does, at one point talk about how politicians are maybe wired to need attention in a certain kind of way, and how he thrived in a world of superficial and transactional relationships, and maybe that same quality that really served him well as a politician in politics possibly led him to some of the problems that he had in his other parts of his life, where he was engaging in some of these online relationships, as he says, like he was playing a video game. So, I think you do get to see him reflect a bit on some of what makes him who he was and how he makes sense of what he did.
Well, I mean, we have a moment where he's watching his Lawrence O'Donnell interview alone in his apartment over and over and over again, which is wildly narcissistic in many ways. Did you ever want to step in and say anything to him, or just armchair psychoanalyze him at all when you were with him? Did you do that when you were working for him?
No, I mean, the process of filming like a verite film like this is really just being in the moment and capturing as much as you can. I mean, there were some times where I got to ask him some questions, but for the most part, this was just an experience of just trying to sort of capture the story and see what emerged.
Outside of the amount of hours that you guys had, what was the toughest part of the edit? What was the toughest scene to edit, or the toughest sort of piece of the documentary that you knew you had to have in there to tell the story, but was just really hard to sort of nail down and hone?
Well, I think the beginning, the first montage, I mean, I'm sure we can think of others, but one
the montage where they're setting up the office?
Yeah, no, the montage and the title sequence montage. We knew very early on that we wanted to tell his backstory and how to do that, and how to do that efficiently, and also how to have that montage sequence speak to Anthony's character. He's funny and brash, and so we were trying to do a lot in that sequence, as well as say the way in which he sort of was catapulted on social media, and he became this progressive rising star, and so we were getting through a lot in that sequence, and the music. So I think that was just one element of that montage sequence that was I think more challenging, but we're happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to start the documentary, and then the campaign office montage is just, it's classic. It just feels like you're pulling from an old politics movie or something from before, whereas people, the montage of setting everything up, and you rarely get something like that in documentaries, because so often filmmakers feel like the truth means not sort of editing or manipulating it too much, whereas you guys are like, no, the truth is that they were setting up a campaign shop, and it's really fun to watch.
Well, I mean, I think this speaks to what we were talking about earlier, wanting the film to embody some of Anthony's spirit. And he had fun at those parades, and he has a fun personality, and he's charismatic, and we wanted that film, wanted our film to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to turn it over to the audience for some questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I was wondering if there was anything surprising that you learned about Anthony while making the documentary, and if not, if there was anything you learned about yourselves while making the documentary, one or the other.
That's a great question. I had known him well, so a lot of who he was and how he operated was something I was familiar with. There was a point at some point in the campaign, after the scandal broke, and just the worldwide ridicule that just fell on his head was so intense that I think there was a point where I thought that he might quit. That basically everyone was telling him the race was over. There's no way he could, to carry on. Like, what's the point? And I was a little bit surprised, and it was really striking to watch, his interest and his commitment to not giving up. And basically, at some point he describes himself as feeling liberated in a death row kind of way. And he really, he felt that, okay, the campaign might be lost, but there's things that I'm here fighting for, and I'm not going to give up. So it was a little bit surprising and striking, and ultimately very compelling to kind of watch him go through that.
Are you guys in touch with him at all anymore?
I've been in touch with him a bit. I haven't, we offered to show him the film a number of months ago, went back and forth during that, but we're still in touch a bit.
I bet someone's going to find him alone in a darkened theater this weekend just with a hat on watching the movie. Next question.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
I was wondering, well, you were talking about having to keep the humor and the content that you're trying to convey at an even keel. I was wondering if there was an edit of the film that you saw, a piece of footage where you're like, no, let's pull back on that, or if any of his people came and said, we don't really like this, or if Anthony came out himself and said, can we not have that in the actual documentary?
So we made this film, and just us, and no one influenced it, or Anthony didn't have any editorial control. I think that, I'm sorry, your other question was?
Was there anything I think that you had to pull back on when you were sort of creating the tone of the documentary?
So I think that going in, we knew that you could make an easy joke. And we wanted to resist that and avoid those stereotypes. And so sometimes, there's a wealth of late night humor, and we were careful in how we use that.
But it was challenging. There's a lot of funny stuff out there.
Logistically, to get yourselves to a place where you can editorially handle this on your own and no one else is going to be involved, was that anything that you had to sort of set up prior to even turning the camera on? Like paperwork and anything to make sure that he had to really be like, I will not bother you afterwards?
It was very clear from the very beginning that this was an independent documentary, and they agreed to participate throughout the whole process.
Next question.
Hi, thank you both for coming. My question is, what do you think future politicians could learn from this, or even politicians now?
That is a great question, and it's a big one. I think Elyse...
Number one, don't show your penis on social media.
I guess there are some
Number
simple,
two,
right?
don't show your penis on social media again.
Although, you look at what Donald Trump is doing, and it seems like, maybe all the rules are broken now, right? And that's, I think that to speak to your question, I think that this is something that we're hoping the film speaks to, is just, so much of what you see in Anthony's struggle during this campaign is trying to get past the spectacle of it all, right? Trying desperately to talk about issues and to be taken seriously as a candidate for mayor of New York City, and not being able to. And I think that, the parallels are clear to some of what's going on now with somebody like Donald Trump, and just how much the conversation is so completely overridden and driven by spectacle and entertainment and sensationalism. Trump said not long ago, he stood up in front of a rally and he said, I could be presidential if I wanted to be. He said that'd be easy. And, it really speaks to, he's openly acknowledging that, if he was presidential, people would be bored and they would no longer want to come to his rallies. And so he's just sort of acknowledging that this has really become, to a very real degree, about entertainment. And I think that speaks to where we are in our politics today.
Do you think if Anthony had embraced the spectacle a little bit more rather than tried to deny it, try to sort of not talk about it, he could be in a situation like, I don't want to say like Donald Trump, but he could have been in a better position?
I don't know. I mean, I think that this is definitely one of the questions of the way that his scandal played out, that, there's a lot of different ways it could have gone differently, and there was a lot of mistakes, I think, that he acknowledged he made and how he talked about it along the way.
Next question.
Hi. You guys mentioned that you have 3 years invested in this. How's the bottom line look? Can you make money making a movie like this?
Are you asking if you should get into documentary filmmaking to become a rich person?
I just wonder if you're at least breaking even in the black.
We're very happy with the way it's working out, but documentary filmmaking is not generally a career you go into to become rich.
But whether you become rich or not, you did money comes and goes. Works of art last for a very, very, very long time, and I think you guys have that under your belt. Congratulations. When can people see the movie?
So it opens in theaters on Friday.
And go see it. It's unbelievable. Go see it with an audience. It's very funny. It's very fun to watch. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.